Hello, everybody, with Jeff here with Black Label Capital. Look forward to speaking with everyone today. All right, give us just a second. We are getting up and ready here. We got some exciting stuff to talk about today with title, and we'll have them on here shortly. We've got a handful of people as you come in. I see a lot of reoccurring faces. I see a couple of Davids in the group, and then also some of our other friends. So we'll have this going here in just a second. But for those that don't know about Black Label Capital, we're a hard money lender based out of Plano, Texas, founded in 2018. Our owners are locally based here in Texas. Our biggest footprint will always be, the Dallas area. And we will be talking about a handful of different things revolving around title. But back to our owners, they started out with the company doing fix and flips, did somewhere between 20 and 30 flips, and decided they wanted to kind of focus on the financing side of things. And that's how we transitioned. Melissa Berry, the guest of the hour, are you on? I see that you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Well,
Okay.
welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited here. For those that don't know Melissa Berry, she's got 25 years in the industry, and I was kidding with her. She posted something on LinkedIn the other day, and she said wizard or maker of all things happening or something like that. And I thought it was a joke. And we'll get into the story here in a minute, but she's really making some good things happen with us current day with a project that we have closing up. But she has a wide variety of, all the standard type residential that you hear of, but also transactional investment, airship issues, traditional closings, and she excels at complex problems and finding a way to solve them. And so we'll dive in there a little bit. And then we also have Timothy Leach, our other co-host here. He is with Black Label Capital. His title is Director of Credit and Capital Markets. And Tim, you want to say hi real quick to give us a little background about yourself? And Tim is having technical issues with his speaker, so we'll have that here in just a second. But with that being said, we'll circle back around to him. But Melissa, do you want to go ahead and kind of go over some of the basics on the title side of things and why it's important, and go from there?
Yeah, give me one second. I'm gonna just shut my door really quick.
Okay.
So we don't hear the background voice. Okay. So my name is Melissa Berry, and I have been in the title industry for over 25 years. I got started 25 years ago, but I got started in the title plant, working up title commitments and typing them up for commercial and residential properties. And during my 2 to 3 years of doing that, I cross-trained in different departments with a title company that I was at. And I started to do abstracting and examining residential stuff, reviewing surveys and learning how to review surveys. Also cross-trained in the curative department, which is how they taught us how to think things through and how to clear things up on title. And the reporting and policy department. And I learned how everything came together and why it was important to have title insurance, because when you're looking at all these different properties that we're examining, you see all types of liens that come up on title, all these different situations that you just have no idea that they even exist if you're not embedded in this industry. So with that said, title insurance is extremely important. And I know a lot of people think, well, why do you need it? My cousin owned it, my dad owned it. They don't have any liens. There's nothing against the property. And that may be all well, good for just what we know on the surface, but nobody knows what a title company may have missed prior to that person owning the property. And then there may have been something that was reported against the property that was done incorrectly, because that happens a lot. So the way that I explain title insurance, it's kind of sort of like your auto insurance. It's there to protect you when it's needed. You know, you're paying a premium on auto insurance though every 6 months to a year, and you're hoping that you never have to use it. Well, it's the same thing as title insurance, although you only pay it one time when the property is being sold. The buyer gets the title insurance based off the sales price of the property, and either the seller or the buyer pays for that title premium, but it's only paid one time, and it's valid for the life of the loan or the life of the policy that that person owns the property. And again, you're hoping that you never have to file a claim. I mean, that's as a title company and title insurance underwriter, that's what we're hoping for, is that you never have to file a claim. But again, it's there to protect you in the event that's needed. As many of you guys are investors, you guys have probably come across all different types of liens, and we have, you know, your traditional mortgage liens, then we have your HOA liens, we have your child support liens, we have your abstract of judgments, we have federal tax liens, state tax liens, property tax liens, what else? Memorandums are on there a lot, especially with investors. And there could just be a lien. I've seen one that's just called a lien affidavit, and I was like, what is this? And you know, it's really did not have any validity to it, but it was still clouding title. And of course, you have your mechanics liens. You know, your mechanics liens from vendors who, contractors who didn't get paid for whatever reason, or they did get paid, but they didn't file a release. A lot of the liens that I do see or that come up on title could be liens that have been paid off, but now they need release. Well, how do you get them released if that vendor or if that mortgage company is out of business? How does that get cleared up? So there's a lot of things that can come up on title where we have to really do some magical things, like Jeff said. It's knowing how to problem solve. It's knowing how to think outside the box, who to contact. There's no book for this. There's no rule. There's no list. It's literally thinking outside the box. It's taking all the tools and resources that we have at our fingertips and just utilizing those. And a lot of the stuff that I cannot find, you know, through our traditional ways, I go to Google, you know, I'll go to an underwriter. I will go, you know, to other escrow officers, you know, if I have to. I'll go to my attorney. So let me back up a little bit and tell you how I got started and where I'm at now. I had been in the title business a little over 20 years when I was approached by this attorney to partner with, in the sense of having my own fee office. Having my own fee office is having like a franchise of the company. And so that gives us the ability to move under different title company names where we're branded. When I first started out, I was under the Lawyers Title brand. And then when they went through that cybersecurity attack at the end of November, we switched our licensee over to Secured Title. So that gives us the flexibility to move our licensing whenever we need to. Of course, we don't like to move, but if it happens, like in that instance, and we needed to, we were able to without any issues. So it's my own franchise of a title company. I can't own it outright because I'm not an attorney myself. So I have to partner with an attorney who we have our own internal agreement on how we operate things. But with that said, this is my office. I operate this as my baby. Like, everything that I do is to maintain and sustain throughout this industry, and to make sure that I'm providing the best customer service to my clients, and being able to have that returning business because of the business that I offer, and the quality that I offer, and the experience that I offer in helping get deals closed. I've had several offers come my way because another title company couldn't get it done. So you are not going to find an escrow officer who's going to work as hard for a deal as I will, because every deal literally matters. Every deal matters. Every deal is important. Every deal that I close helps keep my office afloat. And I opened the office in February 2020, so I'm going into my 5th year. So it is extremely important to me that a deal gets done. And it doesn't matter how small of a deal it is or how big of a deal it is. I'm going to treat it like if it's the only deal that I have in my pipeline at that time. But since a lot of people do know that I can take on the stronger, complicated files, I do get those a lot. And so when I'm kind of bombarded with those, it does take me a little bit longer to process those. And I can't give each file the same undivided attention as I would if I only had one or two complex files. So
Are
I will say that if if you guys send me complex files, I will give you a time frame of realistically what can be done. So but back to the problem
you,
solving part.
you
Oh, I'm
you
sorry,
had
go
a
ahead.
lot of questions that, or you stated a lot of things, Melissa. And I know
Oh,
you're
sorry.
on a roll.
Yes.
Um, uh, but I guess I had a question going back. I guess I had two questions.
Okay.
You mentioned title plant, like everybody would know it, and I guess I've been in the industry for a long time, and I had to, it's not a term that on the lending side we use very often. So,
Okay.
um, just a quick, explanation of what that is, because I feel like it's becoming more prevalent, and then
Okay.
going from there. Just
Yes, I'm sorry. You see, I get a little excited. I'm a little bit passionate about what I do, so
that's a
I can
good
get
thing,
on a
right?
roll. So please stop me at any point. Title plant. So every agency, every title company has a title plant that and I'm going to say this because a lot of it has changed because of COVID, but pre-COVID, the title plant was typically at the corporate office where it housed all of the examiners for the residential and sometimes the commercial properties. So you had your commercial examiners, you had your residential examiners, and they were in the title plant that did all the examination. They pulled all the film, and I said that really sounds old because back in the day, we actually had to pull film. We had the computers where we sat in front of them. We had to go through the little dial and go through the film to review documents, where now everything is done digitally. And so you log
Mm-hmm.
into a system, a platform where you can look things up digitally, electronically. So
Hmm.
the title plant housed all of these, all of this equipment at one point, and then all the examiners. Now, post COVID, I've heard and learned that a lot of the examiners are now able to work from home. And so there's not necessarily a title plant as much, but it's still the terminology that we use where all the examiners for the residential and commercial properties examine the properties. And it's kind of known as the house, like, the
Hmm.
office, the apartment of where all the examiners sat to review documents. So I don't think that that's the case these days since COVID has happened, but that is when I say title plant, that's what I'm referring to. We
Gotcha.
are submitting either the documents or something for review to our examiners at the title plant in the department so they can review those documents and give us an approval or tell us what
Hmm.
needs to be done.
Hey, Melissa, this is Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can.
I
And
I can. I
oh, hey, I don't know if anyone can see me, you guys. I see my camera picture on one screen, and then the other one's black. So I may just
Yeah.
be a man of mystery to many of you. And if you can see me, I apologize. Um, really quick, Melissa, we're here today talking about title insurance. And
Mhm.
insurance, my goodness, that sounds so familiar because here comes our shameless plug. We just did another webinar on insurance last week. So for those of you who missed it, you can look it up and look at that one as well. Shameless plug done. Anyway, it's a pleasure to have you here. I know you and I have spoken a few times. So what is title insurance? What does a title company do, and what purpose do they provide? What services do they provide in the terms of a mortgage transaction?
Well, we provide we are ensuring that when the property is being purchased and it's being financed, that from a mortgage company's perspective, the mortgage company's lien, the loan that they are loaning the borrower, that lien is going to be in first lien position. And it's
Okay.
important to the mortgage company to be in first lien position because in the event that the borrower falls behind in their payments, then as a lender, as a mortgage company in that first lien position, it gives them the full right to start the foreclosure process. And any other lender lien that is subsequent to that first lien will not get paid, and they lose out on their loan, on the money
And
that is owed to them from the borrower.
and then how
Um,
about the borrower? How does it, what is the big thing for the borrower on this? I mean, when I go to buy a house or even, be it an investment property or my primary house, title
mhm,
insurance is important, but why
mhm.
is it important?
It's important because as a borrower, they know that they are going to have this property and they're going to own it. And there is not any doubt that they're the owner. There's not
Okay.
going to be any issues on title. Um, so title insurance, we ensure that the property is free and clear, or that we clear all the items that, if there are anything that we have
Okay.
to clear, we clear all that for the borrower so that they buy a property that's free and clear. And the only lien or the only debt that would be on the property typically is the mortgage lien that they're taking out to buy the property. And they know that they are the rightful owners, and the sellers that sold the property to them are the true sellers, because we've done our due diligence to confirm that. So
So
go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I spoke
No,
over you.
so they have peace of mind that they are the rightful, they will own the property outright, and there will not be any issues on title whenever they go to sell the property, or if they ever decide to refinance the property.
So how does title insurance differ from, let's say we see these commercials, those of us that have insomnia and that are not sleeping, we're seeing the 3 a.m. infomercials for like Live Lock or Live Link, or not Live Link, that's a different one. Life that supposedly give you, hey, we'll ensure that people aren't using your credit and that your property is safe. What is the difference between title insurance and those other paid services that guarantee that they're going to make sure nobody is putting illegal liens on your property or anything along those lines?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with LifeLock and those products, but from what I'm gathering is, it's a service that they're just monitoring. If
Okay.
there's a change in ownership that gets filed with the county, because that's public record. So they would be able to monitor it that way, but they, I'm gonna assume that they cannot necessarily monitor if any liens are gonna get filed against the property. Um, and so with title insurance, it's an actual policy. It's like your car insurance policy. It's a
Okay.
policy that is insuring the individual in the event that they have to file a claim. Then that individual can file the claim with the underwriter, submit whatever documentation they need to. And then if it's truly a claim that the title company missed, then the title insurance covers that because they purchased a policy. So I don't know that necessarily LifeLock can pay for anything in the event that something happens. I think they're just a monitoring service, where title insurance is an actual policy that is insuring the borrower who's purchasing the property.
Right. Thank you. I'm sorry if I messed with your role there. I kind of wanted to get a couple baseline questions in for people that are just maybe new and not really understanding when we throw all these words and terms around.
Oh, no, sure,
Um,
please.
and Jeff, I mean, so I know you, excuse me, Melissa, I know you came with some specific things that you've been seeing in the market out there that you wanted to address. Some acronyms and abbreviations that title uses to help us understand what's going on, why there may be a delay. I know we've talked about airship. The guys know I don't mean like an airship of an airplane. It's HEIR. Uh, it doesn't come across that way when I say it, but that's what it
Yeah,
means. So when we're talking about that, and we've had that occur on a few of our transactions lately. I'm sure anyone who's been in the industry for a while has had that happen as well. So I mean, I'll leave it up to you. I just kind of wanted to again give you a nice lead into it, and I know these are things that really are common and happening more and more often out there.
yes, yes, it is. So an airship, and like you said, Tim, it's spelled HEIR. That is an affidavit. Well, first, it's whenever there's a deceased person and they do not have a will that's been probated. And again, this is a two-part answer, so just bear with me, because I want to give you guys enough information, but not overwhelming. But I want to make sure that everybody understands this part of the process, because it can get very detailed and complex. So whenever there's a deceased person on title, the first thing we're going to ask is if there's a will. And if there's a will, great. Has it been probated? What does probate mean? Probate means is when that will has been taken in front of the judge, and the judge basically is activating the will. And so everything that's outlined in that will now becomes active. And the person who is named the executor of the estate is going to be able to become the executor, or will be able to become the executor of that person who is deceased to sign off on any of the documents that are needed to sell the property. So that is when a will is probated with the probate court. And that is the only way that we can utilize a will if it has been probated through the probate court. Now, let's say they have a will and it has not been probated. They have the choice to get it probated, but that takes some time. Or they can do what's called an affidavit of heirship. Now, where it can get kind of a little convoluted is, let's say there is several children and they're not all from the same parents. And in the will, it states that only one child is supposed to inherit the property. And if the other children are not in agreement with that, or if there's fighting, or if there's going to be a child that doesn't want to sign off, if we have to go through the affidavit of heirship route, then it might be best to probate the will so that it minimizes the complexity of who's going to sign and the fighting of who's going to sign or not sign. Because I have seen one heir hold up a closing, and actually stop the closing, because if one heir doesn't sign, then we can't do anything at all.
Wow.
So it's important to know, when dealing with deceased owners, who the heirs are, if they're all in agreement, or if there's going to be any type of fighting. Because if there's a will, it's going to be best to get it probated. And if you have to wait 3 months, 6 months, I think that's a lot better than having to wait 2.5 years in some instances, where I've had one go as long as 2.5 years that they had to wait to sell it.
So I
And
know
then
a
they had
lot
to
of
get an attorney involved with that.
I know a lot of people believe this concept that, hey, if I have a will, it lets me avoid probate. Yeah, that's why a lot of people think, hey, I go this path, and that really is not the case. That's not true.
Not at all. Not at all.
Wow. Okay.
So without the will being probated, because it does, so when it goes through the probate courts, it becomes official. There's the recording information, through the court system. They get stamped and it becomes effective. So, and it's kind of similar to any document, per se. If there's a deed out there, if there's a lien out there, if it doesn't get recorded with the county clerk's office, then we can't find it, and we can't include it in our title commitment. We can't put it, on our Schedule C as a condition that needs to be cleared. So this will has to be probated through the probate courts in order for it to become essentially active and effective, so that we know that now whoever is named the executor of the estate in that will is a person who is allowed to sell the property on behalf of the deceased owner. So I know that there's a lot of people who, well, I have a will. Was it probated? No. Well, then unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. And that's where the affidavit of heirship process comes in. And we just hope and pray that, that the children, that the children are all living, and that the children are from the deceased parents. If there's more than, if both parents are deceased, we hope that all the children are from the same parents, because if they're not from the same parents, then that brings in other obstacles and issues, and can delay the closing even further. So an affidavit of heirship, we have it completed by, let's say there's a deceased mom, or deceased, or both parents are deceased. We typically would like for it to be completed by one of the children who are living. And then the two witnesses that have to attest, which is basically confirm all the information within the affidavit, that they're confirming that all that information is accurate, basically saying that it's going to ask, how many times each deceased has been married, how many children do the deceased have, and who are the parents of the children, and hopefully the information matches. So we'll have the one person giving all the answers to the questions, and then we'll have the two witnesses that are going to confirm that all the answers are true and accurate. So the person giving the information, they're called the affiant, and then of course the two witnesses are the witnesses. But all three, the affiant and the two witnesses, have to answer the questions, and they have to sign the final affidavit. So you have the airship questionnaire that's going to be completed by the affiant, the person giving the information. They submit that back to us with a copy of the death certificate, and then we prepare the final affidavit where the affiant and the two witnesses sign that affidavit.
That's a whole different meaning of the word defiant. So really, really quick, and then because I always like asking these little things. What's the worst one you've ever had with affidavits of airships? How far down that rabbit hole have you ever had to go?
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is the 2.5 year one, because I got, so there ended up being 17 errors.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So let me see if I can recall the information and give it to you in an elevator pitch, because it was very lengthy. So this property was owned by 5 brothers out in the Terrell area. And it was owned by them in like the, oh God, probably like the 60s. And I'm gonna state, they were all Black males. And the reason why that's significant is because at that time, none of them, nobody knew about wills. They didn't leave anything like that behind. So the family had to eventually get an attorney to help with this. But what happened was we got all five brothers that were deceased. Well, each lineage of each brother had their own set of kids, and those kids, some of them were deceased.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we had to find out how many kids each brother had. Then let's just say the oldest brother had 3 kids. We had to find out if they were all living or if they were deceased, because if they were deceased, we had to do an affidavit for them. Then we go to the second brother, then the third brother, and the fourth brother, and the fifth brother, and everything was repeated across every brother. Well, I found out who all the living heirs were. But while I was putting everything together, another daughter came into the picture of one of the deceased lineages. And she was a daughter that her father never claimed, but she was rightfully owed interest to this property. So at the end, we finally got all the heirs completed, got all the information done. I was FedExing documents left and right to different people, different cities, and even one across in Germany who lived in Germany, who had to schedule a notary signing at the embassy because that's where they had to get the documents notarized. Got everything done except one heir did not want to sign. And he did not want to sign because he did not want to acknowledge that his sister was a child of his father's, because they came from different mothers.
Oh my Lord.
And because they came from different mothers, he stopped everything. I mean, because he would not sign, we could not get it done. And at that point, there was nothing I could do. And they kept calling me and they kept calling me. And I'm like, I am so sorry. There is nothing I can do. I've done all I can. He's fighting this. He's not going to sign. Unless he signs, we cannot move forward. You guys are going to have to hire an attorney. And they had to hire an attorney to partition the land, which basically, I don't know all the legalities of that because I'm not familiar with that process. I haven't had to deal with that personally. And as an attorney, since I'm not an attorney, and as attorneys, that's what they specialize in. So that is their specialty. But they have to do what's called partitioning the land, which basically like isolating his interest and taking him to court for his interest to have the judge force him to sign. And that takes time. And in this particular case, I mean, it took us probably a good 6 to 9 months to even get to the point where we got everybody on the same page to sign, until this one heir decided not to sign, and then another 1.5 years for them to go through the whole court stuff. So from the time that I opened title on this property to the time it actually closed was a little over 2.5 years.
Oh my. So see, people, if you're living a soap opera life, it's gonna come out. It's it's gonna come out.
All
You may
right.
think you can hide it, but it's not gonna stay hidden.
No,
All right,
I
Melissa.
mean,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say we become like little private investigators. Like we have to research and do all kinds of stuff, because we also pull information from obituaries. I mean, obituaries are public. You can just kind of Google that, and that's how we find information out as well. Like we go through the obituaries, we cross check that information from what we get from the death certificates, because we can't prepare and finalize an affidavit of heirship without a death certificate. So without that, then we can't move forward. So we do take the death certificate, we cross-reference it with the obituaries, and we make sure that the same thing that they're saying within the obituaries, what they're saying in, what they're stating in the death certificate. Although sometimes in the death certificate, it will just state the actual blood children that deceased have, where the obituary will recognize children that they raised, but they're not theirs. So as long as we get a birth certificate from the children that are technically not theirs, then we'll accept that, and we're able to clarify that those children in the obituary, although they recognize them as their kids, are not their blood kids unless they legally adopted them.
I mean, and who would have thought that affidavits of heirship is going to be this interesting and fun and going to? We could probably spend another 30 minutes just telling horror stories on it. But I know your time is limited, so let's go on to your next and your list of things, and I'll try and keep my mouth shut during it.
Well, real quick, I want to jump in. We got a question for you guys that are new. You can use the chat feature on Zoom and send in questions. Derek Lanneman has. He's one of our star attendees of these webinars, and I don't know if I've met him in person. I think maybe I know we've emailed or talked on the phone. But anyway, Melissa, the question is, what is the cost of title insurance and how is it determined? So I know there's some items that are fixed, and I know that some might be based off of the loan amount. So that's the first question we have in the chat box.
That's a great question. Title insurance, it is fixed, and it's based off the policy amount, and that's going to be based off the sales price or the loan amount. So if it's a purchase, the title policy is based off the sales price, unless here's the caveat, the loan amount is higher than the sales price. So then at that point, then there's an increase because now the loan amount is higher than the sales price. So now it's based off the loan amount. But typically title insurance is based off the sales price in a traditional sense. And then on a refinance, it's based off the loan amount.
Perfect. And then we'll give you a couple easy questions. So it's the last. Tim's giving you the hard questions. When does title require a survey, other than the obvious if it is a new build? Do you guys normally require it on any fix and flips, and those sorts of things?
So on traditional transactions, we require it because the lender requires it. If the lender, so as part of the title insurance that we're insuring to the lender, we're also insuring certain coverages regarding the boundaries of a property. And unless the lender does not require these additional coverages, which is also known as endorsements. So think of endorsements are equivalent to an auto policy as additional options. Like you want towing, you want renters, you want I can't think off the top of my head, but those are the additional options you get on an auto policy. Well, on a title insurance policy for the lender, they have specific endorsements they want added to their policy. And if the lender requires a survey coverage, then we require the survey so that we can review it to give that coverage. That's on a traditional closing, traditional purchases. On investment properties, We only require a survey again if the hard money lender requires survey coverage. There's a few out there that do not require survey coverage, so they'll close without a survey. There are some lenders that require survey coverage. Hard money lenders require survey coverage, so then we require a survey because we cannot give that endorsement or give that coverage without reviewing the survey.
Mhm. Perfect. Okay, and then another question from the chat box. I think we covered it, but just in case you want to throw anything else in. Question says, what happens if I get title insurance on a property and in some way an ownership stake in the property is missed? How is that resolved? I think that's your five brothers
Yeah.
mentioned. I mean that because is that the standard way, get the judge involved or get a legal involved and then force them? That's the most common way.
Uh, Without going down a rabbit hole, yes and no. Yes and no, because it's gonna be a case by case basis. So let's say, the five brother situation, and let's say one of the heirs was omitted by whatever reason. We only know based off the information that we get from the heirs. So let's say none of the heirs mentioned this fifth brother, and through all our research that we did on our own, we missed that fifth brother as well. Well, we would have to go back to them to get it fixed and to get it corrected. What that step is and what that process really looks like, I don't know, because that typically is handled through the claims department on side of things. What they'll do is come back to me and they'll ask me for all the information that I had, all the documents, all the paperwork, everything that I collected to resolve that, that it was only 4 heirs and not 5. And so then what they do with the homeowner at that point, or the prior homeowner or the heirs at that point, I really don't know, but that's where the claim will come in. Then our title insurance claims department and our all them, the attorneys, then they take it from there and then they work on it from there. I really don't know what that process looks like in detail, but I know that that's the steps that we would have to take. But being that it's title insurance, they would do everything they could to resolve it, to make sure that the current owner who purchased the property maintains that property and everything is protected at that point. But I just don't know exactly what that process looks like.
No, that's great. And I think that explains it. Okay, and then real quick, and then we'll go back to the chat box. But liens, I had a realtor that I follow on Instagram or that we've used a few times. They went on a tangent that they didn't like solar panels. And you know where I'm going with this, probably because it can leave a second lien on it. And so and not as much as in Texas, but mechanics liens, do you have an aversion to them? I mean, you're a rock star, so you know how to get around them. But any horror stories from mechanics liens or solar panels that you can talk about?
Not really horror stories. How I see it being complex for buyers is that sometimes the amount that is because most of the solar panels that I've seen, they're transferable. So when the buyer is purchasing a property with solar panels, they have to consider if they can add that debt to what they're looking to just purchase the property. And that's kind of where I see it. It's more complex. I haven't seen where solar panels have become an issue for us from our side,
Okay.
as far as getting it insured, because it's transferable. So we just make sure that all the documents are in place to transfer that over to the new buyer, and we just work with the vendor, with the solar company, to just make sure that they get what they need, and so that now it's transferable. It stays in second lien position. But that's the only complex, or that's the only thing that I see as an issue with solar panels, is whether or not the buyer can qualify for the lien amount for the solar panels plus whatever they're trying to purchase the property for.
Definitely. Yeah. And it was something when I did owner occupied, 6-8 years ago. It came up again, so I just wasn't sure if that was something that's trending again or not. But going back to our chat box there, and like I said, you guys can use the Zoom feature to throw in any other questions. The question states, if lenders are requesting coverage of 125% of loan amount, are lenders forcing buyers to pay more for coverage when they request that?
Yes, it increases the lender's policy, not by much. So it's not hundreds or thousands of dollars. I mean, you're probably talking about maybe an increase of anywhere between 25 to maybe $125 on their side. Just depends on what the loan amount is. So it is enforcing the buyer to pay a higher coverage for the lender's policy if the loan amount is 125% of the loan value.
And I think that makes sense with most of our, the acquisition price, and then majority of our clients are adding into it. So I think that kind of falls into there.
Right,
if
because I'm sorry, because as a lender, you want to make sure that your the property is protected based off of the loan amount. And honestly, I've done some investing, so little tidbit, I think I was probably Matt's second or third borrower when he started his hard money loan. So I've known Matt for a while, but you want to make sure that the title insurance is protecting you as a borrower as well, because let's just say that you don't get the higher coverage, and for whatever reason it's an option, and you don't get the higher coverage and something happens. Well, now you're out of pocket that money that you would have to pay back to the lender. There's all these cliches that in life that we're given. Everything is hard, but like losing weight. Losing weight is hard, but not losing weight and not being healthy is hard as well, because then you have all the additional expenses in medicine or whatever the case may be. Staying disciplined is hard, but what's the alternative? So there's always this thought of, I don't want to have to pay so much money in this or that. But then what happens if you don't pay that extra coverage, or you don't have that additional coverage, and then something happens, and then now you're paying more money, the coverage that you could have just paid a minimal amount for in the very beginning. But in Texas, because it is mandated, then the 125% amount is going to be the insured amount. So it does increase the title policy premium just by a little bit.
Okay, now you get dealer's choice. Previously, when you and I talked, you wanted to go over for investors some documents and that sort of thing. We can either we got another question in the chat box right now. We can take that one, or we can talk about the documents and come back to the chat box. You get to decide.
Okay, let me just touch on that really quick, because I think it's imperative. So if you are an investor and you have an LLC, as a single member or even a multi-member LLC, it is imperative that you guys have an operating agreement that states who is authorized to sign the documents. And let's just state that let's say there's 2 or 3 people that are stated in the operating agreement of who's authorized to sign, but only one is going to sign. Well, then you need a corporate resolution giving authority to that one person who's going to sign. So what we typically ask for with LLC documents is we need certificate of formation, certificate of filing, your EIN letter from the IRS, and your operating agreement. And those are the 4 documents that we typically ask for. And then if it's a multi-member LLC, then, and only one person signing, then we need a corporate resolution giving that one person the authorization to sign specifically for that transaction, because every transaction may not just be that one person. It may be just this particular transaction is that one person. So those are the 3 or 4 to 5 documents that we ask for with an LLC. But if you don't have those, especially if you're a multi-member LLC and you don't have an operating agreement, please do yourself a favor and get one. And you can Google operating agreement, Texas LLC operating agreement, and it will provide you with one for free. You just got to kind of search through the results, but you can find one that's on there that you can download and fill it out. I cannot advise how to fill out an operating agreement, but if you read through it and kind of skim through it, it'll tell you what to plug in and what's needed. But those are the 4 documents that are needed.
A couple quick questions on that. We're talking about an LLC. What happens what are you aware of what the differences are, or can you guide us on the differences if it's a S Corp or a C Corp versus an LLC?
Um, I don't really know the differences on that. I know that, as far as tax, the taxing part, there's differences on the
Okay.
tax part of it. But as far as like who's authorized, sometimes within the operating agreement, it'll give the specifics. So I've never studied those enough to really remember the differences between an S corp and a C corp. I know there are differences regarding, for taxing purposes and how the LLC is taxed and how, like what bracket they may be in or what they're able to write off, but not enough to be able to really translate that to you guys.
The bottom line is we're looking for whatever they may call it,
Mhm.
the equivalent of an operating agreement with the equivalent information. So whatever if they want to call it the bylaws, if they want to call it something else,
Right.
we're just looking for that equivalent of that operating agreement. And the second thing is we've had some lenders and some underwriters come back with this, an operating agreement. Does title have any requirements to that being notarized, recorded? What requirements do they have on it other than that has to be signed?
From title, it's just signed.
Okay.
It's just signed by all the members.
No, see, those were easy ones.
Yeah.
All right.
I appreciate the easy.
From the chat box, what advice do you have for clients when they come to you to open title? How can they make the process easier for you?
I love that. Is this from traditional sense or investment?
Investment side.
Okay. Investment side, what I'd like on when opening title, of course, is the property address and then whether the owners are deceased or not, or what their situation is, if they're divorced or if they're deceased. I have a seller info sheet that some of my investors keep on them where they can go ahead and get all that information completed when they're speaking with the homeowner or the heirs of the homeowner. Because if they get all that information completed up front, then it'll help me get started with some of the research that I need to on my end. I also give them a blank questionnaire that they keep on them. So when they are dealing with deceased homeowners, then they can already have that questionnaire completed. But typically it's just providing as much of the information on the homeowner as possible, whether again that they're deceased and whether they're or they're divorced. And then if you are going to do an assignment on this, let me know that up front. Just say, hey, will you open title on this? I don't have an end buyer. We're going to assign this. And we'll just, that'll help us prepare the file the way we need to. Also, because there's nowhere on the traditional TRED contracts, there's nowhere to state if it's going to be a hard money loan or a cash deal. So most of the contracts are drawn up as a cash. So if you guys could just let us know that if there's a hard money lender involved, that would help us out, because the way that we prepare the file versus an owner's policy or a simultaneous policy, it is different on how we process it on our end. I mean, we can switch it up, but it just helps things flow a little bit easier. Another thing is if you are wanting to do a double close, a simultaneous close instead of an assignment, let us know that as well. Every title company, I've worked at several different title companies. One of the things that I love about Secure Title is that they do allow us to do simultaneous close and not have to use transactional funding. So I know that there are some title companies out there that require transactional funding. We don't. So if you want to do a double close so that your end buyer doesn't see, what the margin is there in the middle, then that's something that we can do here, but only specifically with me and my office. I don't know, because I'm a fee office, I don't know how experienced the other escrow officers are within the company. And then some don't do it just because they're not familiar with it. And so when they're not familiar, they're like, oh no, I don't want to touch that. But this is, investment properties and simultaneous close, double close, assignments and all that, that is a strength of mine. And I've been doing it for a long time.
So
But
let's
that's,
talk.
Go ahead.
So let's talk about that for a second, because it was almost speaking Greek to, I think, some of the people out there.
Oh, okay.
Explain transactional funding, double close. What is that? What are those? When do those occur?
Okay. So when you're an investor and you are are assigning the property to an end buyer, let's just say your margin is maybe $15,000. And you don't want the end buyer to see that you're making that $15,000, and you don't want the seller to see that you're making, any more money. Not that they would, but you just don't want there to be any chance that anybody sees anything. That's when a double close would come. So you'll do two contracts. You'll have the contract between you as the investor and the seller, and then you'll have a contract between you as the investor and the end buyer, where now you're the seller. Both contracts will be submitted to title, and the first contract, of course, will have the lower sales price, where the second contract will have the higher sales price because you're charging a higher amount to that end buyer. Where transactional funding comes in place is where some title companies require the investor to purchase the property outright from the seller, from the homeowner, with their own funds. And instead of using the funds from the end buyer, and I don't want to confuse people. So transactional funding, you will have to borrow money for just that transaction to purchase the property from the homeowner at that time, and then the end buyer closes on their on their end, and they bring in their own money, and then the money that the end buyer purchases funds that deal, but the transactional funding that you get for the front part of the purchase funds the front transaction. Did I confuse everybody?
So Real Estate King Bob buys a house from Frank and Sally, and he's going to turn around and immediately sell it.
Yes.
With the transactional funding, what has to happen is Real Estate King Bob has to actually get a loan in his name, which he then purchases the property from Frank and Sally, has it for like 1 day, and then sells it to Betty and Harry.
Not necessarily a loan. There are some lenders out there who will borrow the money and send the money directly to the title company, knowing that they're going to get it back the next day. So there's no paperwork that's done. So basically this person sending the money in is acting like a private lender, but there's no documents to record because it's just a 1-day thing. So what did you name him? King Real Estate Bob?
Real Estate King Bob.
Real Estate King Bob. So Real Estate King Bob has a friend that's going to loan him the money, or a company that's going to loan him the money, because there are companies that understand what the whole transactional funding process is, and they understand the risk of doing it without filing paperwork. So Real Estate King Bob has his ABC company that's going to loan him the money for this transactional closing. They're going to, the ABC company is going to send it to secured title, and we're going to hold the funds until it's all funded. And then ABC company may or may not charge a fee of maybe 0.5% or something of the loan amount for loaning them the money to the secured title for the transaction.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily a loan where they're like go through all the paperwork and they're having to do all that. There's some companies out there that will allow this type of transactional funding. I don't know them off the top of my head because it doesn't happen very often here because we allow the double close. So the double close is where the end buyer's money funds the first contract.
Okay, so it goes, instead of paying it forward, we're paying it back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I want to jump in real quick. Throwing it out there. We do have another webinar. It's going to be on June 19th. It's a diving into hard money numbers, kind of going over the term sheet. June 20th, and Melissa Berry is a title sponsor for that event out at Pop Stroke. So if you're local, come hang out with us, play some mini golf. We'll provide some appetizers, and then drinks are on your own. And then July 10th, we will have an appraiser go over kind of questions on what to look for in appraisal and those sorts of things. So those are the next couple of events. I don't have any other questions in the chat box, but Melissa, is there anything? I know we've kind of jumped around and gone over a myriad of different topics. Is there any other items you want to go over before we close it out?
No, I mean, just to kind of recap, guys, I know, people have their difference of opinions on title insurance and whether it's needed or not. Even as an escrow officer and been in the business for over 25 years, and even when I'm purchasing, properties, I would never, ever buy a property without title insurance. It's just not worth the risk because title insurance, the research is done by humans. Humans make mistakes. Stuff can come up, that have maybe been missed from the city. I mean, there's just numerous things that can come up, but having that title policy just clears all of that and just helps move forward with the process and makes things just so much easier for you in the long run. So if anything, I just hope you guys understand the importance of title insurance and how it's really there to protect you when it's needed. Because I mean, again, you're insuring against the unknown. And that's the part that nobody knows. So I hope you guys have a better understanding about that.
And it's always great to have a title officer as great as Melissa helping out on this.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, she goes above and beyond. And I know we referenced it in the beginning of the webinar, but we've got a title or one that's closing that is that's been a hectic one to get to the closing table, and guys flying to Boston but has a layover, maybe going to a sports game, and the other title company couldn't make it work as quickly as her, and she hopped in, and I guess she kind of knows the other title company, and she backs them up, and then before they leave to Italy, so she's literally setting up a remote notary in Boston for a property closing in the greater Metroplex area. So
Yes.
going above and beyond that's the quick version, and then I've got the contact information here. Do you have a business social media handle that you use, Instagram or something like that, Melissa?
I don't ever remember these offhand. Let me pull it up because I do. My Instagram.
It came in the questions there, so I wasn't sure if there was a business one or not. So
Yes. Well, my Instagram handle is Melissa _escrow _title _team. So it's Melissa escrow team, but underscores in between, all the words. And then my Facebook is oh gosh, again, I don't know my Facebook handle, but it is, let me see if I can pull it up. Well, it's under my personal name, but I do post business stuff on there. But it is you won't find it's Melissa Tovar. My maiden name is Tovar, Tov as in Victor, AR, and then Barry. That's the way to find me on Facebook. Sorry guys, I don't know my handle.
No worries.
Sorry.
Instagram is good. We'll get you get it on there, and no worries. I wasn't sure if you had a business page that you directed people to or whatever. So, but no, they anybody that has more questions for Melissa or Tim and I can reach out on to us. Contact information is there, and I assume, Melissa, you're coming on the 20th to Pop Stroke, right?
Yes, I will be there.
Perfect. We will have it there, and thanks everybody for coming out. And if you want to learn about breaking down a term sheet, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And Melissa, thank you so much. It's been eye-opening, and appreciate your hard work, and hopefully we can continue to stay partners like we have. And thanks for closing that one in Boston.
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you,
thank
Melissa.
you guys. I love
you.
working with you guys. So, and to all your investors out there, I mean, if you guys are not working or closing with our, Black Label Capital, like you guys, I mean, they're awesome. And you guys really are. Y'all make it so much easier for me. You have no idea.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And
All
we
right.
try. Thank you. And
right.
thank you for your time.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Y'all enjoy
right.
the rest of your day.
You too.
Mhm.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.